everybody. Welcome to iCast Guidance, your weekly Dungeons and Dragons and TTRPG podcast, where every week Rich, Garrett, and I pick up a subject around the culture of gaming and discuss it with you. So, without further ado, sharpen up those daggers. We're going to get started right now.
Let's talk fucking Daggerheart.
Daggerheart, baby.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I'm pretty freaking high on Daggerheart right
No,
now.
me too. It's really cool.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I agree. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everybody.
Hope y'all are doing well.
Welcome to iCast Guidance. Today we have Nathan with us.
Yes, hello. Hello again.
It's the usual suspects plus Nathan, and we have so much to go over today.
So much.
To start off, let's talk about rabbit.com, our faithful companion.
Yeah, we've got a listener named rabbit.com who's really good in the comments for us and offers a lot of, I think excellent feedback, frankly. And I got to tell you, Rabbit, I'm shouldn't be putting this on the podcast, but I'm going to. You made a comment about things you can hear in our microphones when we're playing the game. And I read that comment. I think what I did to my group stripped all the joy from our game, but I did kind of make it known that our eating habits while we're doing this are a problem.
It's fair. I'm editing the Daggerheart game we just did in Amakora, and there's a lot of noises going on.
Or like, have you ever seen the video of that gopher or something that's like eating a farmer's vegetables right in front of their security camera? He's just like chomping on a tomato right in front of the camera.
It's
that's
so good.
That's Rich with his bag of cheese doodles.
Yeah, seriously.
You're not wrong.
Thank you
You're
for
not
that.
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, rabbit.com did have a comment that he left last week on the podcast for iCast Guidance when we were talking about PAX Unplugged. He says, I think it was mentioned Daggerheart has been in development for like 5 years now. Honestly, I'm surprised it's taken them this long to get something that they could replace D&D with. I was kind of expecting it to happen between year 5 and 7. I think what he's saying is I'm surprised they did it this quickly, right? Because 5 years to develop a game to compete in the TTRPG space, I think is, I would go with average or below average. I think it's going to take longer than that.
I think so too. But it seems like they're kind of moving at a breakneck pace, like altogether. So I'm not quite surprised that it only took them about 5 years,
I don't know. How long do you think it really takes to create a TTRPG, though?
Well, it's just like with any game, right? There's so much work that goes into deciding, the design of the game mechanics, and all of those elements. But then there's the play testing side of it. And genuinely evaluating the play test side of it and looking to your market to say, hey, let's play this, give us some genuine feedback. And then you have to go back to the drawing board, right? You're going to hear things in that play testing you don't want to hear. You'll hear things you do want to hear, but then it's like, how do I remove things that maybe I believed in because most people say, hey, this just doesn't work.
Well, that's a sign of a good game designer, right? If you're willing to listen to the community, the people that are actually playing the game, and take a little bit in and change it for the best. I mean, also in this time, they've developed a card game, kind of like Magic the Gathering, that just came out.
Yeah, you sent me that and I glanced at it, but I haven't had a chance to really dig in. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those mana base, battling games with heroes and, rarities and card packs and everything. I don't know much about it.
And it's based on the characters in Critical Role?
Yeah, everything in Exandria. Pretty much.
Gotcha.
It seems interesting.
I agree on that. And I'm really interested in looking at that. But backing it up for a second, what Nathan, you said before we started recording, 5 years to create, say, this game, Daggerheart. You've got to be good at what you're doing because you're going up against
D&D.
And
D&D is a well established TTRPG. I don't even need to say that. I'm really impressed with how it functions.
Well,
and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think they're, what's the word?
Well, I would say this. I think that what's important to make the distinction between here is anyone can make a TTRPG and you can decide how long you want to take to make that TTRPG. You might be really good at it and pull it off in a year and throw it out there and it comes out in whatever form. I think what we're confusing this with is the presence of Dungeons and Dragons as this entity that needs to be overthrown. And I think the reason we're looking at it that way is because Critical Role has played Dungeons and Dragons for so long. And now to hear that the kings, I'll call them the kings of D&D because they were really the force that brought D&D back to light, right? And they play it very, very well. So if they're going to design another game, we see that kind of as a, what's it called?
Open competition.
Well, and also, the queen is dead. Long live the queen. I mean, you're kind of like coming in and usurping the power because you are in line to maybe decide what that power is. Right. Maybe.
Well, I think it also comes from them playing D&D at the highest level and seeing its glaring faults and wanting to kind of change and morph D&D into something that they would want to play.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing D&D on that level for that long, like we tweak our rules and come up with different systems because we feel like it'll work better. I feel like at their level, it makes sense that they would have a whole new idea for a TTRPG, how they want to play it.
Well, and they're kind of moving with the entire momentum of the industry right now, right? Going away from battle maps and dungeons into this role-playing, story-based space, right? It makes sense that a game would be developed for that, solely in mind.
So, there's this idea that a new TTRPG, especially one with the force behind it that Darrington Press and Daggerheart has, could be the Dungeons and Dragons killer, as we like to use that term. But again, I like to think that maybe Dungeons and Dragons is doing a fine job of killing themselves on some level. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the job of another game to come in and destroy them. Maybe just to kind of take away a decent chunk of the market share that D&D has.
Well, I would say, you're never going to kill D&D. I don't think it's going to keep going.
Right.
But you're going to have people that might want to branch out to something different.
I often think about these different TTRPGs as different operating systems. So you have Apple versus Android versus whatever. I think that's pretty much analogous to playing D&D or Daggerheart or whatever other form. I think Daggerheart has some real strong potential, and I also agree that nothing can kill D&D, but I think they'll be healthy and good competition for each other if they do feel competitive in such a respect. I believe in both of them, really.
Yeah.
Well, today's discussion really is around Daggerheart and what Daggerheart is, as well as what we think about it and how we sort of had experiences with it at PAX, as well as the play that we've done. We've done a fair bit of Daggerheart play, here as a group. And so we kind of wanted to bring that to the podcast to talk to our listeners about and say, hey, here's a really, really good system that, streamlines a lot of things. So why don't we jump into that? Let's start talking about what Daggerheart is in general. Who wants to just kind of
I'll do it.
Yeah, sum that up for us.
So to sum Daggerheart up, it's a TTRPG system that focuses on storytelling and kind of making all of the more arduous parts of D&D more streamlined, like combat and these other mechanics. So it's very heavy on pacing and story structure.
It's much less formulaic. I feel like a lot of things in D&D come down to purely randomized events and randomized structures of events. Playing D&D, everything feels so much free form. Even the character creation, you have to focus in on who are my party members and how do we know each other, and building those connections beforehand. Even down to the dice rolls. It's much less about the random output and puts much more emphasis on what story are you telling.
An interesting way that I just came up with it was it's kind of like a D&D, right? But if the rule of cool was at the center of it.
Oh,
you know what I mean? It's way more open to guiding the story in a certain direction that best serves a dramatic narrative.
Wait, what's the rule of cool?
You'll know the rule of cool?
Oh, it's not that I don't know.
So when you're playing D&D, right, and maybe somebody wants to do something that doesn't quite align with the description of their spell or something, but it's so intuitive and cool, the DM is you can do that.
Good. No, I just wanted you to explain it to people that might not understand it that way.
Yeah.
That's all.
So I think Daggerheart is kind of centered around that. You know what I mean? It gives when it comes to initiative and all these things, it gives a little bit more lucidity, fluidity.
I was going to say freeform.
It's organic.
Yeah.
It's really organic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, listen, when we started talking about ways in which we improve a tabletop role-playing game when we're playing it, and in this case, we'll say Dungeons and Dragons, because that's what we've always played. What are some of the things that get in our way? Well, initiative gets in our way, right? Combat and the mechanics of combat have always kind of slowed things down. We understand that while people are waiting to take their turn, it can get boring and they check out. So these are the kinds of things that Daggerheart really does a fantastic job of answering and streamlining, because they build in the idea that the story should move, the drama should move.
On that, on moving the story forward or moving the combat forward or anything. I know it's not in the beta playtest, but they've come out and said, just the way that their interaction with armor and the way you get hit, there's a lot less mathematics in this system compared to D&D.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah. It's like, in a combat, you'll be able to just choose, I want to use a piece of my armor to block this incoming hit. It's less hit points you take. There's almost no math in it compared to D&D.
Well, why don't we get into a few of the key mechanics that make this game different, and we can each talk about one that we like. I know that Nathan's chomping at the bit to talk about the 2D12 system, right?
Yes.
So Nathan, hit it.
Yes. So I mean, I know we just said that there's not math in it, and for the play style, there is much less math. But coming from a mathematical background, I was looking and thinking about the 2D12 system, and I just saw the beauty in the design of it. I mean, when I first heard about the 2D12 system and started playing with it, I was like, hope, fear, that's pretty cool. Not thinking so much about the outcome of a random roll, any given random roll. But the design aspect of it is mathematically beautiful. So if you're not familiar, the 2D12 system for Daggerheart replaces, or not so much replaces, but is equivalent to D&D's D20 system.
But for the players, the GM still uses a D20.
Yes. So if you want to make a skill check or you want to roll to hit somebody, what you do is you take 2 D12s, you assign one to be your hope die, and you assign one to be your fear die. You roll the two together, take the sum of whatever those two die roll, and that's your numerical roll. Whichever die rolls higher, your hope or fear, determines if you succeed or fail that hope or that roll with hope or with fear. And that does some other things for you can use your skills, or it does something for the DM, boo. Or I should say GM.
Watch it now.
Yeah. But I was looking at something about in probability called a probability distribution function. And so for rolling a 12-sided die, that probability distribution function describes what the probability is that you roll a 1 versus a 2 versus a 5 versus a 12. And as is with like a 6-sided die or any other sided die, the probability of rolling any given number is just a 1 out of 12 chance. But when you're rolling 2 together, you can roll anywhere from a 2 up to a 24. Now, I'm going to make a video about this that's going to go on our channel where I can go more about this in depth. But basically, the way those two distributions come together is that you have the highest probability of rolling a 13 in a 2D12 system, and a slightly lower probability of rolling a 12 or 14, and slightly lower for an 11 or a 15, and so on, all the way down to you have the lowest probability of rolling a 2 and the equally lowest probability of rolling a 24. So what I like about that is when you roll 2D12 any given time, you are favored to do just about average. And let me get into this because I know that sounds a little but what I hate about the 20 system is that you're rolling, let's say you're rolling with a DC 12, right? And you have a +5. There's still a pretty good chance that you could just get fucked and roll a 1. That is a 1 out of 20 chance that you get fucked and roll a 1.
That's in a D20.
Or a 2 on a D20 system, a 1 or a 2 or whatever. In the 2D12 system, it would feel like an act of God to roll something like a 3. And mind you, if you rolled a 2, that's 2 1s. That's a critical success. for the 2d12 system, you roll both. If both of your die roll the same number, that's a critical success. But whenever you roll, you're favored to do just about the average. So if you have a plus like 1 or 2 in whatever given skill, that pushes you just over the cusp of whatever your DC is going to be. So it's not going to feel so shitty half the time where you're a powerful character, but the dice just said, fuck you that time.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, you're going to do okay.
So, and number one, if you guys out there want to have your nerd bone tickled by Nathan's complete mathematician like brain, this video that we're going to drop in probably about 2 weeks, I'm thinking, if that's going to come out, is going to go into this on such depth with charts and illustrations and all kinds, because you've made some amazing tables from this.
Yes.
Nathan's taken a really deep dive into how this 2D12 system not only works, but like really enhances the game. And can I just kind of jump off of what you're saying for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Because what I love about the 2D12 system and the hope and fear idea in this is that the roll functions more than just a simple numerical indicator of whether something happens or does not. It actually functions now as a way in which the color and tone of the story changes towards the positive or the negative. And that now takes the die rolls mechanics and softens them into the narrative, thus sort of supporting this idea that, you know, the Daggerheart game really champions storytelling, which I love. That's my favorite part of this.
Right. And two, like not even just with the hope and fear system, with the nature of how you get a critical hit, there are 12 ways that you can roll a critical success on 2d12. Meaning if you roll a 1 and a 1 or a 4 and a 4 or a 12 and a 12, that's a critical success. What possibilities that opens up is if you roll a 1 and a 1, you could tell a story about what your player is trying to do where they screw up so terribly, but by an act of actual God,
it works in their favor.
It works in their favor.
Yeah. I like that.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
So Garrett, do you have one that you actually like, a section of this?
I was just going to say, backing what you just said about the double ones, when we were playing Daggerheart once, I believe I rolled 2 ones, and my mind immediately was like,
fuck,
shit. But then I was like, wait, that's actually a critical success in this game. So I like that aspect of it.
It takes out the pain of the dice roll and just shifts it more to a narrative aspect.
No, I do.
Yeah. It gives you a lot to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing that I really liked when we've been playing is there's ways that you can team up with your party members or whatever. And there's team attack rolls, and you both narratively describe how you're going to, either it's a skill check or an attack on a monster. And you spend a certain resource, like you spend hope to do this in the game. But because Daggerheart has they do away with initiative. It's kind of a free form, narrative driven combat, which we like. For the most part, we're still playing with it. We're still learning it because our bodies are so,
used to
in tune with initiative.
Yeah.
It's a little hard, but we're working on that. But the ability that I could just look across the table and say, Rich, let's do this thing together. And, I feel like you lose that in D&D and you don't have the opportunity to do that. When that came up the first time we were playing, I was like, this is so much fun.
Well, and as your GM, can I remind you of something? We're dropping our Daggerheart series called Andira's Embers right now. It's starting to hit YouTube, and we've got it in it's between 8 and 10 chapters total, but we have to finish that game. And in the character development phase in session 0, Nokrin, played by Nathan, clearly said he was going to use Barnacle, played by Garrett, as a weapon because Barnacle is a rivet and has the tongue action. And you thought of this idea where a team attack could be used where you throw him like some kind of weapon and the tongue comes out. Well, that hasn't happened. I want to see it happen.
Nobody's needed an ass licking.
No.
Oh my goodness. Speak for yourself.
Oh my God.
Wow.
On the air.
Wow.
There it is, people. There it is.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, I mean, just in Daggerheart, I like the different rule sets and the different, storytelling, I guess, more base driven role play in this game compared to D&D?
yeah.
Yeah, team attack is inherently story driven.
Mhm.
It's sort of like, we're going to gang up and I'm going to grab a hold of Barnacle, who's a frog, and I'm going to like hurl him out towards the enemy. And while he's out, he's going to attach the tongue to, this weight on the ground and hurl it forward so he can double up. There's all this kind of way in which I can play out.
And there's no mechanic like that nowhere near in D&D.
No.
Well, or in any other system that I can think of, but maybe there is. But the point is that is now a core thing here. It's front and center.
And two, I feel like in combat in D&D, a lot of times it becomes like your turn is done and then you are checking out. In Daggerheart combat, if you're sitting there waiting for a chance to strike, your finger is on the trigger. You are much more invested in what's happening at the table and for a possibility to jump in for an attack with one of your allies.
Yes. I'm going to hop in here with my favorite mechanic. And it's interesting because I think that with Dungeons and Dragons, one thing that really bothers me is that it feels like it takes a while for your character to come online. Sometimes you don't get your subclass until level 3, which is if you're like a ranger or something and you want like you're a beastmaster, you don't get your pet until level 3. What are you supposed to do till level 3? You know what I mean? That's the whole vibe of your character. That's what you want to do. In Daggerheart, the class structure is super intuitive because at level 1, you come in with everything you need to role play and have this character be online and function the way it's supposed to function. And the only way leveling up helps you is by making the things you can do already more powerful.
Right.
Well, I think and I get that, and I totally agree with it. I think if I could try and justify Dungeons and Dragons' attempt to not do that, it's because they were just trying to mitigate all of the Marvel Universe wannabes that are like trying to, OP their characters too early. Whereas Daggerheart, I think, puts a lot of trust in the player to understand they want a more real experience. And so they're not going to overpower their character too early. They're going to pull punches where needed or not, inject too much into the situation.
I get what you're saying, but there's a difference between like being super powerful and then just having your character function the way you're intending him to function.
Right.
I want my pet with me from level 1. He doesn't need to do a lot of damage.
Right.
But I need him with me roleplay wise.
Right.
Or let's say like the most highly rated thing Dungeons and Dragons has done lately was fix the subclasses in the 2024 Player's Handbook. And that's because all of these awesome subclasses are structured in a way as to where your character gets everything they need for that subclass at level 3. And then everything after that seeks to make the abilities you got at level 3 more powerful.
Right. Right. Well, I think that Daggerheart does a lot to fix these things. And that's one of the reasons why we love the game, and I can't wait to do a whole series of videos on all of the different ancestries and all of the different classes for Daggerheart. Once we have a firm grasp of what it is that we're actually talking about, I feel like if we take too much from the beta 1.5, there's going to be changes that come out in the final edition of this that will then make those videos not entirely relevant. So I want to talk about that stuff and we will get there. I'm trying to think of another mechanic that I want to just throw in here to kind of give a little bit more interest in this game for you guys that are listening out there.
The experience.
The experiences are unique. That's cool. But I was going to say, what do you like?
Well, earlier I talked about how the hope and fear die add to the narrative part of it. But I think what I'm going to say that I like, and I'm still learning how to use, is the fear system for the GM. Because, so when a roll is completed by a player and the fear die is higher, that roll either succeeds or fails with fear. And at that point, the GM has a move. They can either take a fear token and add it to their pool of fear tokens, or they may actually take over the narrative at that point, right? It kind of becomes, everything shifts towards the GM at this point. So things get darker, right? The situation probably grows a little bit more grim or things shift. But I do love that. And I think that's one of the things that GMs in this game are going to have to first really kind of figure out. It's not hard to figure out, but it is different in that mechanism is in play for you to now come in and the story turns a little bit. And I'm getting better at it, but it was a little odd at first. So if you're listening out there and you're thinking about playing this game, do not be afraid of this fear system for the GM. It might be something you just have to kind of warm up to.
I like that it adds momentum. Like in all the other parts of the game, you feel like you're in a story structure. Either you're like climbing to the climax or you're coming down, and it adds a sense of momentum. Like if you're rolling terribly, right, and your characters aren't doing what they are trying to achieve, and the cards are getting stacked against them, and on top of that, the monsters are able to do more things to beat you up. Like, yeah, everything kind of has like a snowball effect to it. It's awesome.
All right, listen, we're going to take a break right now, and you're going to hear some words for us. But after the break, when we come back, I'd like to talk about some of the things we experienced at PAX around Daggerheart. In specifics, Garrett and I, we went to see Critical Role's first live performance of the Daggerheart system on stage. It was a one-shot. So we want to talk about that. We want to talk about some other things around Darrington Press. So let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about that. See you in a minute. Hello, esteemed listeners. Listen, if you like what we're doing here on iCast Guidance, we have a brand new way that you could possibly say thanks for doing what it is that we do. And don't get us wrong, we love to do this, and we come together every week. We're spending all of our week trying to think about how we're going to present to you a new topic. We're doing the research, and frankly, we love it. We love getting together to talk about this stuff. But we thought we should put into play some kind of system where if you wanted to pop in and buy us a cup of coffee because you like listening to the show, that we gave you a way to do that. So we are now on Ko-fi.com, and coffee is spelled ko-fi.com/Wither and Bloom Studios. You can head over to that site and you could leave us a tip, or you could even sign up for a monthly membership if you want to. And by doing this, you say to us that you really love what we're up to and you hope that we keep going. And frankly, when we get those tips, we feel supported. We feel like, oh yeah, cool. This is, we're getting some affirmation here. That's great. So consider heading over there and doing that. And if you can't afford to, that's okay. Tell a friend about the podcast, spread the word about us, and get other people to listen to us. We would appreciate that as well. Anyway, thanks again for listening, and let's get back to the show. All right, we're back from the break, and I kind of am excited to talk about some of the things that we experienced around Daggerheart when we were at PAX, and some of the things maybe we've been experiencing in the gameplay itself, and get away from the mechanics a little bit and just talk about how we really feel about this game. So I kind of want to jump in with going to see Critical Role live.
Let's do it.
Right?
Yeah.
So this was amazing.
It was.
Right. It was the first time I saw Critical Role live. Right. And it was the first time they played Daggerheart as an live performance. Mm-hmm. So what'd you think?
It was amazing. Again, I've been to like a Critical Role panel, but I've never been to like a live play event. The energy and just everything in the whole place was amazing. It was a packed house over in Camden, but it was so much fun.
Yeah. I have to say the one thing that just knocked me off my feet, the first thing that knocked me off my feet. Mm-hmm. And when we got to meet Spencer Stark and we were talking to Spencer Stark about the game design and what we thought, the first thing that hit me was when Matt Mercer said, "Hello, everybody, and welcome to Critical Role, where a bunch of us nerdy ass voice actors sit around and play Daggerheart." And the whole place was like, oh my God.
Yeah, everyone like kind of had a really quick gasp and then just cheer.
Yeah.
And it was just to experience that in person. It was awesome.
Well, it was it was a real like watershed moment. It was like this moment where it's like, oh my God, he just changed something that was so profoundly inscribed in this narrative.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a Critical Role fan and you've been watching them for 10 years now, how many times has he said the line where we sit around the table and play Dungeons and Dragons?
And then they all go, "We play Dungeons and Dragons."
And it's just, that is so ingrained in your head to hear him say Daggerheart. It was really cool.
Right. And cool. The audience loved it. The audience was like totally receptive. So to me, that says that the audience who is, look, when people are used to a thing, people don't like change. I mean, I do. But people don't like change. And so when something that big shifts and your audience is behind you, okay, this is a good sign.
And I mean, we personally saw that at PAX. Like the first day that we were there, we went to the Darrington Press booth And, we met some people that were just so excited to learn more about the game, see the game, pre-order the game. But we did also have an experience. I had an experience where I brought up Daggerheart in one conversation and one guy was like, well, fuck it. I'm not into trying it. He wasn't excited for it. Everyone's going to have their own opinions and, swaying that, like you just said.
Yeah, we don't
might
have
be
to,
difficult.
We don't have to hang out with those people.
No.
They're not welcome here.
But one other thing I think to say about the live show, and it was when we were talking to Spencer at the table on Sunday. So this is after the live show. And we're talking to Spencer Stark, and he's like, how flawlessly did Matt Mercer run that game? It was 4 hours long or so. He ran through 4 combat encounters or more.
Yeah.
And told this flawless story and just the mechanics. It went so smooth.
Yep.
Can I ask, how, sometimes when we play D&D, right, combat kind of brings the pacing to a halt, a dead stop. How does that feel in Daggerheart?
I mean, I don't know. Todd has a different opinion. I didn't feel like it really slowed down at all.
Wow.
It was just they're professionals here.
Yeah.
But the new system where you don't need to do any math on taking in damage, like for your armor slots, where in the beta test you had to minus subtract all your numbers and stuff. Like the new system, they're just like, I'm going to spend a slot, lower that down 1.
That's awesome.
And it was just so quick.
Yeah.
And it just kept rapid firing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
I love that.
And it's when one of the players would roll fear and fail their roll or whatever, Matt would be like, all right, I'm going to pick it up from here. And he would pick it up and run something from one of the, enemies. It was nice to see.
And for those of you that don't understand this notion of the no math, and there is some math that has been minimized to a degree. So what we know in our older TTRPG systems is you have an armor class and you have to roll at that number or higher in order to hit the thing you're trying to hit. In this case, our armor is basically a series of slots, right? And armor is a thing to be utilized, not a thing to roll against. So in Daggerheart, you're rolling against my evasion score, right? So my evasion score is my ability to be missed by that attack. However, in any case where I'm hit, my armor comes into play where I say, I'm going to use an armor slot, meaning I'm going to allow my armor to absorb some of the damage. And I am going to basically drop that damage load by a section. Damage comes in 3 sections, right? There is minor, major, and severe, right? So if I get hit with severe damage because somebody rolled a lot of damage points, I can use an armor slot to drop it 1. This just basically takes all the math rocks. We're still using them, right?
Yeah.
But we're minimizing the impact. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Someone who really hates when it comes to just a grinding halt, I love this system. And even in our own game where we're playing Andir's Embers right now, which is just going up on YouTube, chapter 1 and 2 this weekend. I could tell that we move from storytelling to combat beats, pretty gracefully, and it's less mechanical and just more it's just more of the same. It's just that there's violence involved now. So when it comes to actually functioning in this game, I love the just having hope as a resource, because I don't know, it's nothing nothing else I've ever experienced before, because it's different from spell slots and it's different from hit dice when it comes to being a monk or something. It's its own thing, and it functions with the pacing and the vibe of how the story is going at the moment.
Well, what hope enables you to do in one respect is to use your experiences, which is just so cool and so clever. Again, something that enhances your ability to take control of your character's narrative with respect to the gameplay. Basically, what an experience is you can say basically my character has some sort of advantage in doing this. And it has to be reasonable to whatever your backstory is. But Nokrin, for example, because he was sort of a detective, town's guard person, I put one of my experiences as Gumshoe. So if there's some sort of some sort of solving a mystery that needs to happen, which, spoilers, that's pretty much all of Endira's Embers. I could spend a hope to use that experience and get a +2 to a roll.
Yeah.
Right. So then there's a lot more context to what you choose your backstory to be and what you're enabled to do. You're actually able to use that to influence how well you do on a roll for something that makes sense for your character.
It seems as though the game itself and the creators and like the function of the game itself is rewarding people who put time into their backstory and who really know their characters.
Yes. And you know what, even like another way it's stepping away from the math, instead of like taking time to min-max your stats and craft the perfect combo that makes you so overpowered, that the experiences mechanic says, no, you don't have to do that necessarily. If you take time crafting a character and you want to give yourself an advantage on something from that background, go right ahead.
And why wouldn't you have advantage, right? Because if my background says that I've always done this, and who knows what that is, maybe I have always just been really great at shifting the narrative onto someone else because I like to project my own problems onto them. Or I don't know. I'm pulling this one out of thin air. But the point is that if it's something I've always done, it should absolutely play into my character's ability to do a thing better than the average person.
Will your experience be called Gaslight, Gatekeep, Girl Boss?
Oh my gosh.
Yes, that's exactly my experience.
Yes.
There's instances in D&D, like I played one yesterday, right? And I had a rogue in my party. And, you know, he built his character in a certain way where like he didn't really get an advantage on like stealth or anything. And I'm like, why would a rogue not be the stealthiest person?
Were they a new player?
Yeah, they were.
Oh, well, that's the problem. You know, that's not their fault. They just didn't know what they were doing.
No, I know. But like that, I feel like that wouldn't be a case in Daggerheart because like, you know, having a rogue just as your experience would automatically give you that +2 sneaking around.
Well, we would assume that what got that person to being a rogue in the first place would be some kind of behavior that sort of set them down that path. So yeah, sure. I would assume that would be the case, which in a lot of respects, Daggerheart says, here's how we're going to fix not having that problem you just described happen again. Is I'm going to say, hey, what are your experiences? And you have to sit back as a player and think, oh, wait a minute. What are my experiences with this character from the past that would contribute to that space they are now?
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
I feel like the game respects you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It wants to hear you.
It wants to hear you.
It respects opinion. And and creativity, I think, more so than, you know, a structured like D&D.
It's interesting because I feel like Aster Crumb, my character, which is like a level 2 wizard half orc, is fully fleshed out and able to do everything that I imagine he'd be able to do at the moment. And it's because of the fluid game mechanics that allow me to feel that way with my character.
It's funny. I feel like every Daggerheart character I make, and maybe it's because I've just gotten better at playing TTRPGs, like in the past year or whatever that I've been playing TTRPGs with y'all. But I feel like every Daggerheart character I make is so, I love them so much more that don't get me wrong, I love Circe. I love Circe.
Well, your EI character, the environmental interface, was one of the best characters I've ever played a TTRPG with ever.
Like I just, and it's all because of those questions. It's like, there's no surprise, but it's like the creators of the game know what questions to ask your average person to bring out their creativity. It's like they know that we're all creative types, and they know that we're capable of something that we don't know we're capable of.
Yeah.
Well, you know, any system that we're raised on. Okay. So if you're raised on Canon DSLRs, you're not going to like Nikon DSLRs. If you're raised on Apple phones, you're not going to like Android phones.
That's for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah. So third world phones, whatever.
Hey.
Anyway, my point here is this, is that if you are raised on Dungeons and Dragons, right, and moving to another system, there's a reluctance in there. I mean, I know there's curiosity. A lot of us love to play all kinds of different games and we get into those other systems. But ultimately, there's the one we were raised on. There's the mechanics system that we really inherently know. And I think that that's the biggest challenge for any company that wants to try and challenge the behemoth that is Dungeons and Dragons is, everyone knows that system. So it's going to be hard for them to not want to play in that system.
Yeah.
But like Nathan, what you're talking about here, where you're saying every character I have made in Daggerheart is a character I really love. You're kind of new to these systems. And so I'm curious to see how you, being almost more invested in Daggerheart than you ever were in Dungeons and Dragons, is a really interesting place to be.
Yes. Because I feel like whenever I make whenever I've made a character in D&D, I'm sort of lost because I'm just looking at stats. It's just walking me through stat building, and I actually have historically never given a shit about working on my stats in video games or now in D&D and Daggerheart. And Daggerheart tells me that's okay. And Daggerheart in the character creation asks you questions about who your character is. And the experience is so nice because I think it starts you out asking, well, who's your character? And you can jump around from sections. I'm like, which section do I want to do first? Do I want to choose my race first? Do I want to choose where I'm from? Do I want to choose my class? Do I want to answer questions about who I am? Do I want to come up with a name first?
Well, and I think what's interesting about that is because in Dungeons and Dragons, the character is a result of what the stats are. And in Daggerheart, the stats are the result of what the character is. It starts from two different places.
Yeah. You could even start with your experiences first and then work your way backwards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even think about how the ability scores are done in Daggerheart. It's sort of like you get a +2, 2 +1s, 2 zeros, and a -1 or something to that effect.
So easy.
It's a classic array, right? But it's like put them wherever you want.
Yeah.
And that kind of is less important, I think, than making sure that as a rogue, you've got the +2 in dexterity or in evasion in this case, or agility, I should say. But yeah, I like that. The character comes first.
And they also have done away with prerequisites. So you can be a mage that has a great axe. You know what I mean? It's up to you and what your character would be holding. There's no like stat or functionality roadblocks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, come on. Gandalf had a sword.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you be able to have a freaking melee combat weapon like a sword?
All right. Let me take it from here because I don't want this to just be like, everything is great in Candyland, right? I think that there is, something that can be said about maybe no initiative, right? In D&D, it really stops like the hog, like like someone who really wants the limelight or the loot gremlin or something. It really kind of like makes it fair to everybody. And in Daggerheart, without a DM that really knows what they're doing, without players that are really serving the story of the story and the drama of what you're trying to tell, it can be abused. People can hog the limelight, make 3 attacks while nobody else does something. And it just comes with like there needs to be an agreement around the table and a little bit more, with the respect that the game gives you. There is a responsibility that comes along with it.
I agree completely. And I feel like especially when you're bringing new players to the table that don't understand the dynamics of how this gameplay functions, that's going to be a place that's going to be maybe a little bit more challenging for the GM to handle. Is how do you rein in your players a little bit when that's,
Yeah, because you don't have rules to back you up.
Right.
You're kind of just, it's up to you to be like, I think it's someone else has the moment to act. You've been doing a lot in this moment. What about everyone else been doing?
Right.
Well, you could sort of put the training wheels on and, a little bit of homebrew rulage. Wow. I can use my mouth. Todd, you and I had discussed a system where, it's not so much, it's not like initiative where it's like this person, then this person, then this person. You sort of do it in rounds and everybody is allotted 2 action tokens or 3 action tokens. And then you can spend those immediately if you want or however soon you want. But once your action tokens are gone, everybody else has to do their actions before your action tokens are refreshed. So I say training wheels.
Right. Because in earlier versions of the beta testing, there was an action tracker in the game that sort of, it was like a little currency system on the table when we would move into a turn-by-turn sequence where if you wanted to do something, you had to spend an action token. And then once those action tokens were gone, but that's kind of been done away with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, we're still waiting for the final rule set per se, but we didn't see anything like that in the live show, and they were playing with the new rules.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's more of a respect the other player type thing.
Right. And to Nathan's point, though, Nathan's talking about this in terms of training wheels, so that when you have new players at the table, they kind of get the sense of, hey, here's how we give other players turns. Here's how we share our toys. So I like that a lot, especially you got somebody with main character syndrome sitting at your table in this system that you're going to have a runaway train.
It's going to be
want
a
those
problem.
training wheels on.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that Daggerheart itself isn't going to be for people that also want to just play a game, that want to dungeon delve, that want to, number crunch. It's not the game for them, and it's never going to appeal to those people. It is a game for storytelling and storytelling alone.
I agree. Well, maybe not storytelling alone, but it's going to thrive in the storytelling sphere, right? I don't want to necessarily cut off what I think Daggerheart's capable of in the gameplay sphere. It is absolutely for storytelling, and it's going to really accelerate the notion of storytelling as a collaborative, chance-operated experience. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. And I guess I shouldn't have said alone. If I see it function that other way, I'd be open to it. I just can't picture it in my head how it would function as like a crunchy, numbers driven dungeon delve. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, somebody is going to, and I'm kind of hoping it's us because I've got some ideas, but somebody is going to bring elements of gameplay that fall outside the story but don't impede the story into this as a way to enhance it. I'm not saying I can make Daggerheart better. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say here is that for those people that might miss the mechanical aspects to some degree, I've already started to think about ways we might be able to just slightly introduce those.
Yeah.
But stay tuned for that. All right, you guys. So listen, I am loving all this talk about Daggerheart, and I really love this. We're going to have to wrap up, but we did not do 3-sentence backstory yet.
Whoa,
so we gotta get that going. So for those of you who don't know what 3-sentence backstory is, it's a small game we play to develop a miniature backstory to apply to a character. And the 3 sentences are where you're from, what is a significant thing that happened in your life, and what is it that put you on the road to adventure, which we're compiling all of these over the course of our podcasts. So I got the 3 of you here. Nathan, you want to start us off?
Sure. Am I doing all 3 sentences?
No, you're just doing one. Where are you from?
You started out.
I am from a safe haven in the deepest depths of the Mariana Trench.
Oh my God.
A significant event that's happened in my life was I once heard rumblings coming from the recesses of the earth underneath, the kind of rocky shell at the bottom. And I heard something awaken, and I heard a voice, and it scared the ever-living crap out of me.
Garrett?
I think what led me to adventuring is that voice actually turned out to be a deity that put me on a path, to the surface world. They told me that I needed to find my way out and up and out of this water. I think that's what it's going to be.
Okay. So from the deepest depths to the surface world. All right.
That's Cthulhu.
Sweet.
Nicely done.
Is it?
Nicely done. All right. So listen, you guys that are listening out there, number 1, please head over to YouTube where you will find Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube. Definitely find this podcast in there and leave a comment. It is likely that we might read that on the air. But tell us what you're thinking about Daggerheart. If you've played it, if you're interested in it, if you have questions about it, we would love to answer those. It is currently in pre-order, and it is scheduled to be released sometime in the spring of 2025. We're very much looking forward to getting it. I'm hoping that we will do a video on unboxing it. And then, of course, keep an eye out for our upcoming drops of Andira's Embers, which is our latest Daggerheart game that we're playing. It's all mostly finished and ready to drop any second. So check that out. You guys, this is a great conversation.
I loved this.
This is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to definitely hear more from us about Daggerheart in the upcoming weeks and months. So stay tuned for that. You guys, we love having you along for the ride. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Mwah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to iCast Guidance. iCast Guidance is produced by Todd Lambrix, Garrett Brennan, and Rich Froman. We drop this podcast every week, and we are looking forward to having you hang out for more. Don't forget to head on over to Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube, follow our channel, and definitely comment on what you see there. We will probably read those on this show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to next time.